And welcome to this review of TIA's latest white paper on 5G technologies that's brought to us by InterDigital, and it's written by Dr. Phil Marshall. He's Chief Research Officer at Tolaga Research. We have Dr. Marshall on this program to give us a better understanding of the state of 5G wireless technology deployments, standards, challenges, and other concerns by the vendor and service provider communities as industry makes further investments in next generation wireless technologies. And Dr. Marshall, welcome to the program.
That's great. Thanks, Abe. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to chat to you today.
Well, thanks for being with us. I want to start right out of the gate talking about the TIA 5G operator survey. You said something interesting in that report and survey. You said 5G needs to be a chameleon technology which can adapt to differing demands of wireless services. Can you explain to our viewers the meaning behind a chameleon technology and really what use cases or verticals will be impacted by that?
Yeah, sure, Abe. That's what makes 5G unique in a sense. If we go back and look at 3G, for example, it was really intended to drive broadband or mobile broadband capabilities, and 4G was intended to extend that, and 3G became a very high capacity voice technology in essence. With 5G, what the operators and what the industry as a whole is trying to do is focus on specific use cases that they can capitalize on, or they believe they can capitalize on from a revenue opportunity. So what you find with 5G is a dedicated network technology aimed at these use cases. Enhanced mobile broadband is one, which really is an extension on 4G, but moves to some very high frequency capabilities and some very sophisticated radio capabilities to drive massive peak data rates, or the potential for massive peak data rates. But we also have ultra low latency capabilities, which if you look at traditional mobile technologies, we could deal with about 100 milliseconds. When we go to applications such as the tactile internet, vehicle-to-vehicle communications and so forth, you need to get down to latencies of 1 millisecond, which really requires changes in the underlying technology. So 5G aims to address that as well. And then in the areas of public safety and ultra-reliable networks, by enabling efficient resource allocation end-to-end, 5G can prioritize resources to support those kinds of services, as well as the use cases in and around the Internet of Things, where we're pushing towards, in the case of 5G, towards 1 million connected devices per base station. So what in essence the chameleon technology means is that 5G can really change its form depending on the particular use cases that it's targeting.
Now, of course, Dr. Marshall, as you know, there are a number of 5G trials around the globe to really determine the performance of next generation networks in a practical operating environment. What's unique about the way 5G trials are being rolled out in contrast maybe to 4G or even 3G technologies?
Well, the first thing is the extent of the use cases that operators are looking at applying 5G to means that they need to verify it actually performs as intended for those specific use cases. Many of the trials today are very focused on the enhanced broadband capabilities, where you can achieve, tremendous peak data rates, particularly when you go up into the very high frequencies with centimetre and millimetre wave radio technologies. So certainly there's a lot of work going on there. And what's interesting with those technologies is that virtually every aspect of your network design changes, in the sense your traditional channel models no longer apply. You have to change those to reflect the new technologies. Your network design and architecture also changes. And so with all these, the variety of changes that occur with 5G, it means that the trials are actually in many respects more complicated, and you're finding it very localized towards the specific use cases that the operators are targeting.
Now, another finding in the 5G report and survey is that operators are trialing radio technologies really over core network technologies. What's the significance of this finding?
Yeah, there's a few aspects to that, Abe. The first thing is that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to bring these new radio technologies to market. They're quite sophisticated in terms of the frequencies you're using, the antenna technologies, signal processing and so forth. The radio technology itself can be trialed in isolation more easily than many of the other core functions that are required for 5G. But I'd say more importantly, with operators' sort of network evolution today, there's a lot of effort going on in the area of cloudifying and virtualizing the core network. So in other words, even though the cloudification, virtualization of the network around network function virtualization, or what we call NFV, software-defined networking, SDN, even though those activities may not qualify as 5G, they certainly are very important as the operators move towards 5G implementations. And they're really precursor technologies that the operators are focused on in parallel to those radio technology trials that are specific to 5G.
Now, the 5G survey also indicates that security is considered a significant threat and really presents a number of challenges for industry that apply more to maybe some 5G use cases more than others. What facts do you have or statistics that you may have that are available that may illustrate where these concerns exist?
Yeah, so security is significant in really all mobile services, and there's new attack vectors, new attack surfaces that are emerging. And what we're really trying to do in the survey was to highlight how the specific use cases for 5G would impact security, and whether there would be an increased concern with security, or whether 5G had some features in it that in fact improve the situation from the standpoint of security. And what you find with enhanced mobile broadband is that in essence, many of the respondents didn't see a lot of change relative to security for the 5G use cases, bearing in mind they're really considering the fact that you're enhancing 4G with much higher peak bandwidth performance, and not necessarily considering the specific applications that it might be deployed for. When you go to other applications such as machine type communications and some of the other ultra low latency solutions and vehicle-to-vehicle type connectivity, you certainly find an increased concern in and around security. And I think what that points to is the fact that with those use cases, you've got a much higher integration between operational technologies and operations as well as IT. And so that convergence in itself creates an enormous amount of opportunity for malicious activities and additional attack surfaces that emerge as they're deployed.
Dr. Marshall, there appears to be a concern in the network vendor community that operators may not invest heavily in the purchase of 5G equipment, maybe over the next couple of years, but in fact may wait until 2020 and beyond to make those heavy investments. Where does that leave the vendor community regarding 5G investments, and are they in limbo?
This is quite an issue, actually. If you look at where we are with 4G CapEx and the nature of that CapEx, we're rolling out nationwide networks, and that's what's really driving the unit volumes of equipment that create opportunities for the vendors. If we look at how 5G is being positioned, it's being positioned much more as a technology that's targeted towards specific use cases. And in many situations, particularly if you look at solutions such as enhanced mobile broadband, it's targeted towards specific venues. In other words, we can't be sure, at least for the foreseeable future, that operators are necessarily going to roll out nationwide 5G networks. Rather, they're going to implement it as a complement to 4G. And what that means for CapEx is that it's not necessarily going to be as significant as 4G over the coming years. What the industry really has to hope for and has to identify are those use cases that really drive the need for nationwide or network-wide 5G deployments, and then you sort of get back onto the same kind of CapEx volume or unit volumes and CapEx revenue opportunities that we've seen with 3G and 4G technologies. So it is a major concern for sure.
And finally, Dr. Marshall, I want to ask you about partnerships in the 5G space. For 5G network densification, it requires partnerships across the value chain, not only in industry, but also with building owners, electrical utilities, and public lighting companies as examples. How feasible are these partnerships, and do you see any significant challenges in the partner diversity space?
Right. And this is important, and it really points to the fact that 5G, or many of the 5G use cases and implementation strategies, are targeted towards small cells. And when we move towards small cells, we need sort of different site acquisition strategies. So far, the operators haven't been as successful as we would have hoped in terms of being able to drive these site acquisition at the necessary volumes of sites for small cells. And in fact, they've been proved to be quite expensive in many cases. So what we definitely need is closer partnerships between those who own the key, sort of, if you like, real estate and infrastructure assets for deploying small cells and for enabling operators to densify their networks, and the operators themselves. What I think that means is a shift or from the approaches which we see common today, where operators are very focused on if you like, a strategy of acquiring small cells that's similar to what they've done in the past for macro cells. And what we hope for is that as we drive towards that approach, that we'll see that 5G itself and the use cases it creates will create greater opportunities for partnerships that are more synergistic, so that the partners themselves can capitalize on the services that are enabled, much like what's achieved with unlicensed technologies and Wi-Fi today.
Dr. Marshall, we appreciate you reviewing TIA's 5G report, survey, and white paper. Great job, by the way. Of course, there's countless similar documents circulating in the 5G space in our industry, and this one has a particular significance for the reasons that you just spoke about. So we appreciate your time.
That's great. Thanks, Abe, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to chat to you today.
We appreciate it as well. And to our viewers, for the on-demand version of this review of TIA's white paper on 5G technologies, that brought to us by InterDigital, please log on to tiaonline.org. So long.